السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Allahumma la ilm, and bless us to benefit what you have taught us with and increase us in knowledge. O Allah, there's no ease except for what you have made easy for us, and make every hardship easy for us. O Allah, bless us with the understanding of this deen, and bless us with the implementation of this deen. And bless us to be sincere in us seeking knowledge for your sake. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Alright, in the previous class we took the obligations, we took the nullifiers, we took the acts that were permissible, we took the acts that were disliked. Okay, just a quick recap. What were the obligations? What were the obligations that we took last week? Except for? Except for the first one. Then? Sami Allahu liman hamid. Except for? For the person being led. And then? Yes. And then? Yes. And then? And then? Yes. And then? Two more. Yes. And then? Sitting for tashahhud. Tashahhud and sitting for tashahhud. Then we took the nullifiers. Someone can mention a few nullifiers?
Leaving out an obligation intentionally.
Yes. Yes.
Speaking.
Talking, basically. Yeah. Laughing. The salam before the imam, intentionally. Performing the salam before the imam, intentionally. Adding a pillar intentionally. That was for the acts, not for the sayings, right? Yes, very good. Mispronouncing or saying that in a way that would change the meaning. That was something that nullifies the prayer. Today, inshallah, we'll be taking how to pray behind the imam, and what do we do when we commit a mistake while we're praying, right? We're going to touch on these two topics, bi'idhnillah azza wa jal. So the first thing we have is the congregation. Before we get into the congregation, we have to learn what is the ruling of praying in congregation. The 5 daily prayers, what is the ruling of praying in congregation? The 3 schools of thought besides the Hanbali school of thought goes with the opinion that it's a sunnah to pray in congregation, right? As for the Hanbali school of thought, they go that it is obligatory for you to pray in congregation. But what is the minimum amount for you to fulfill this obligation? 2 people, you and someone else. If it's you and someone else, that fulfills the obligation. Now there's a difference between praying in congregation and praying in the masjid. Hanbalis, all schools of thought go with the opinion that praying in the masjid is a sunnah. But praying in congregation, that's where the difference of opinion occurs. Was that clear? Praying in congregation is different from praying in the masjid. So if someone prays in congregation at home, he has fulfilled the obligation according to the Hanbali school of thought, but he has missed out on a huge reward by not going to the masjid. Was that clear? So praying in the masjid is sunnah by all 4 schools of thought, but as for praying in congregation, the Hanbali school of thought goes with the opinion that it is obligatory to pray in congregation, and all the other 3 schools of thought go with the opinion that it is a sunnah to pray in congregation. Was that clear? Any questions about the ruling of congregation?
Is it sunnah to pray in the masjid or?
It is sunnah to pray in the masjid. Right? So the first part of the congregation. Sure.
So if it's for humbly, so if somebody is not able to.
If someone is not able to, then yes, he's exempted. Anything in Sharia, anything in our deen, if a person is not able to, they're exempted from that. Is that clear? If a person cannot fast Ramadan, he's exempted from fasting Ramadan. Right? Welcome. The first thing we have is the imam, right? Who is eligible to be an imam? Who is preferred to be an imam? And what is the job of the imam? First thing is the conditions to be an imam. These conditions have to be have to exist in the imam for him to be eligible to be the imam and lead the prayer for the Muslims. If these conditions do not exist in the imam, his prayer is invalid, and therefore the people praying behind him, their prayer is also invalid, right? So these are the conditions that the imam has to have. Firstly, he has to be a Muslim. The first condition is that he has to be a Muslim, meaning if a kafir led the Muslims in prayer, his prayer is invalid, and the people praying behind him, their prayer is also invalid, right? So that is the first condition. The second condition is that he has to be an upright person. A Muslim by default is an upright person. A Muslim by default is an upright person, meaning if a person comes to us and he has the rest of the conditions in him, we don't ask him to prove that he is upright. Someone has to prove that he is not upright, right? So a Muslim by default is an upright person, is a trustworthy person, right? So this condition is only with the Hanbali school of thought. The other schools of thought do not make this condition mandatory for a person to be an upright person. So in the other schools of thought, if a person is a fasiq, for example, if someone who is known to engage in major sins and then he leads the prayer, their prayer is valid. But for the Hanbali school of thought, the congregation is invalid. Was that clear? Then you have being an adult in obligatory prayers, right? So we have obligatory prayers and we have voluntary prayers. Obligatory prayers like the 5 daily prayers, right? And voluntary prayers like what? 2 before Fajr. 4 before Dhuhr, 2 after Dhuhr. What else? Qiyamul Layl, 2 after Maghrib, 2 after Isha, Witr. Right? All these are Tahiyyatul Masjid, entering the Masjid, praying 2 rakahs, Tahiyyatul Wudu, praying 2 rakahs after Wudu. These are all Sunnah, voluntary prayers. So if a person is, if there's a congregation for an obligatory prayer, the Imam has to be an adult person. Has to be an adult person. But if the congregation is for a Sunnah prayer like Taraweeh, then the minimum mandatory age is that he has to be a mature person, not an adult. He has to be a mature person. A mature person is someone who understands when you talk to him. He hasn't reached the age of puberty, but he is mature enough to be responsible and to lead a congregation. We had this condition for something else before this. We said that it's not mandatory to be an adult, it's enough to be mature. Where did you mention this? I don't think you were there. You both were here. Adhan, yes. So we said that adhan is an obligation, and if a person who is mature but he's not an adult, he gives the adhan, that fulfills the obligation, right? Sure.
Sunnah prayers are also can be prayed in congregation.
Yeah, Taraweeh.
Other Sunnah prayers also?
Some Sunnah prayers can be, not all. So for example, Salat al-Eid is Sunnah for some. If it's Fard Kifaya, Salat al-Kusuf, Salat al-Istisqa, these are all Sunnah prayers. No, those you can't pray in congregation. Those are prayed individually, right? Because then you have the adult and obligatory. Then you have mentally sane, meaning if a person is mentally insane and he leads the prayer, the congregation is invalid. The congregation is invalid. What was the Islamic definition, the criteria we gave for a person being mentally insane? We mentioned that in fasting. We mentioned that in Salah. Yeah, what we say, how do fuqaha, how do the Islamic scholars define someone who's mentally insane? We said he is someone who does not understand when you talk to him. He cannot keep up a conversation when you talk to him. When you talk to him, he doesn't comprehend what you are saying to him. He is someone who's mentally insane, meaning if a person has a slight mental illness, that does not make him mentally insane Islamically, right? Then you have the condition of male if they're leading other men. So you have three scenarios. Either the congregation is all men, or either the congregation is mixed, men and women, or the congregation is only women, right? If the congregation is only men, then the imam has to be a man. If the congregation is mixed, men and women, then also the imam has to be a man. If the congregation is only women, then it's okay for a woman to lead that prayer. Was that clear? Sure.
Is that according to all schools of thought?
No, there's a difference of opinion. Yeah. The sixth condition is that he has to fulfill all the pillars and the conditions for the prayer. So let's say, what are the conditions of praying? The conditions. Wudu. For example, a purification in general. If a person does not fulfill that condition, and he leads other people to pray, his prayer is invalid, and the people behind him, their prayer is also invalid if they knew that he did not fulfill that condition. If they did not know, then their prayer is valid. Was that clear? Meaning, if the imam did not make wudu when he prayed, his prayer is invalid. And if the congregation also knew that he did not have wudu and they still prayed behind him, then their prayer is also invalid. If the imam is not fulfilling the condition of facing the qibla, he's facing the opposite side, right? His prayer is invalid, and the people behind him, if they knew that, their prayer is also invalid. Question?
So they know after.
After, then it's valid. Yeah. So Umar radiallahu anhu, once he prayed, and after he finished praying, he found out that he was not on wudu. And then after he led the Muslims for Fajr, so he repeated his own prayer, and he did not tell the Muslims to repeat their Fajr. Was that clear?
For the male leading other men, what is the difference of opinion?
Men leading other men?
Yeah, you said there was a difference in opinion.
And women leading other women.
Oh, so sometimes women can't lead them?
Yes, some scholars go with that opinion, they can lead. Was that clear? Okay, if we have a group of people that come to that want to perform congregation, who is put forward to lead the salah, right? So there's an order in which who is preferred, and then if people are the same, then we look for something else. The first is the owner of the house. Let's say we are at someone's house, we are at Zubair's house for iftar, and for Maghrib, we tend to do jama'ah, we tend to do congregation to pray, and we would tell Zubair, you are the owner of the house, so you should lead your guests for the prayer. So this is the first person we look for, the owner of the house. That's if it's in a house. If it's at the masjid, then the issue is different. Then you have the appointed imam. If the Muslims appoint an imam, if the masjid board appoints an imam, if the government appoints an imam, then he is preferred to lead than anyone besides him. So let's say the appointed imam is someone who memorizes 5 chapters of the Quran, and he knows the bare minimum in tajweed. And you have someone who is the imam of the haram in Mecca, and he comes over here. We tell him no, the appointed imam will be given preference unless he delegates, unless he says, I leave my spot and I'll give up my spot for the imam, then that's okay. But if he demands his spot, then the imam of the haram has no right to come over here and take his spot, because the appointed imam is given preference. Right? Was that clear? Then if you have like 2 appointed imams, or if you have multiple owners of the house, we look for the person with the better recitation. So that we look at the person who memorizes the Quran more, who reads the Quran more, who reads the Quran with better tajweed, with better pronunciation. We look for that person, right? So a person who has a better recitation is put forward, is preferred to lead than someone who does not have a better recitation, right? This goes for both in terms of his sound and in terms of his tajweed, in terms of how he pronounces the Arabic words, right? Was that clear? Questions?
So it goes both for tajweed and
Yeah.
memorization, or?
No, his voice, how beautiful his voice is. Then if you have 2 people that have the same recitation, the same tajweed, they both recite beautifully, then we look for the person with more knowledge. Knowledge pertain to what? First and foremost, for the fiqh of Salah, right? For the fiqh of Salah, we see who knows the rulings of Salah more, right? If they both are same, then we look for the who knows fiqh of other issues in Islam more, right? So if you have two people, both of them have beautiful voice, both of them recite the Quran beautifully, and both of them know fiqh of salah, then we look who knows more in terms of in terms of general sciences of Islam. So let's say a person knows fiqh of fasting and zakah and marriage and divorce. We say, okay, you are preferred to lead than the person who does not know that. Is that clear? Then if both of them are same, then we look for the person who is much older, because the Prophet ﷺ said, he is not from us who does not respect his elders, right? So out of respect for the elder, we put him forward to lead the Muslims in Jama'ah. And so if we have two people who have the same recitation, who have the same amount of knowledge, and who are of same age, what do we do now? Then we come to the point, whoever the people choose to lead the prayer. Whoever the people choose to lead the prayer. So if the people choose, for example, we have Zubair and we have, what's your name? Arshan? Arsh. So we have Arsh and we have Zubair. Both of them, mashallah, have beautiful recitation. Both of them are equally knowledgeable. Both of them are of same age. And if the people choose Arsh to lead the prayer, then he is put forward. If people choose Zubair, then he is put forward to lead the prayer. Was that clear? Any questions about this? Preferred?
People choose like the process of voting or
Sorry?
people choose the imam is like process of voting or
So if the people get together and they're leading, they're like, okay, Zubair, you lead. It's fine. Any questions about this? Sure.
So what if there's a situation where there's only women, say 2 or 3 women, and you don't believe in the school of thought that one of the women can be the prayer? How should you go about your prayer? You pray individually?
Yeah, you can pray individually. Yes, you can pray individually. Yeah. Because praying in congregation is only an obligation for men, not for women. Even by all 4 schools of thought, even the Hanbali school of thought, they go with the opinion that praying in congregation is only obligatory on men. Is that clear? Yeah. Any questions about the Imam? Everyone understood the Imam? Right. Everyone's ready to be an Imam? Bismillah. Right. Alright, then we have the person being led behind the Imam, the congregation. Right, the person being the led. In Arabic, he's called the Ma'moom. He's called the Ma'moom. Musalli is the person who prays in general, right? So you have 3 types of Musalli. You have the Ma'moom, the Imam, and the Munfarid. Imam is the one who leads, Ma'moom is the one who prays behind the Imam, and the Munfarid is the one who prays by himself, right? He prays by himself. So the person being led, what is the ruling? How does he stand? If he's by himself, if he's with other people, how does he follow the Imam? We will touch on those issues inshallah, right? So the first thing is the prohibited way to stand. The prohibited way to stand with the Imam. If it's one person, it's prohibited for him to stand on the left of the Imam. If it's one person, it is prohibited for him to stand on the left of the Imam, right? So if there's one person praying behind the Imam, if the congregation is just the Imam and one other person, and it is prohibited for him to stand on the left. Then you have, if there's more than one person praying behind the Imam. If there's more than one person praying behind the Imam, what are the places that are prohibited for him to pray with the Imam in, right? So the first place is to pray in front of the Imam. Praying in front of the Imam invalidates your prayer. If you pray in front of the Imam, it invalidates your prayer. Anyone who's been to Medina will see that in the courtyard, they have these huge boards that say, over here, the Imam stands over here. So do not pass this line when praying, right? There's huge billboards, so make sure that no one passes the line or where the Imam is standing. So the people have to stand behind the Imam, except in one situation. If there's no space in the masjid, and there's no way to get to the back of the masjid, and there's no way to pray in behind of the masjid, then it's okay to pray in front of the Imam. That's a necessity, right? It happens a lot in Medina. Over here, alhamdulillah, you can't enter from the front of the masjid. But in Medina, what happens? You can enter from the front of the masjid, right? And sometimes, especially in like Salat al-Eid or Salat al-Jum'ah, you can't. It's packed, right? You can't pass through the masjid. So it's okay for you to pray in front of the Imam if there's no place to pray, right? Was that clear?
Does this ruling apply to the one is the 2 floor or less?
Yes, all of them. You can't pray on the second floor and be in front of the imam, right? Or to just pray on his left. Let's say there are 5 people praying behind Zubair, he's the imam, Zubair is the imam, and we all pray behind him. We cannot only stand on his left. If we all stand on his left, it is prohibited for us to stand on his left. Similarly, it is as if we were praying in front of him. It could invalidate our prayer. His prayer would be okay, but our prayers could be invalidated. Was that clear? As for the proper way to stand behind the imam, what is the proper way to stand behind the imam? If it's more than one person, then you can either stand behind the imam, right? You can either stand behind the imam, or you can stand on his right, or you can stand on both sides, on his right and his left, all right? So let's say that there's an imam and there are 5 people praying with him. They can either stand on his right side, or they can either stand behind him, or they can either stand on both sides. Only standing on the left is prohibited, but standing on both sides is fine. Now what happens? When we pray with him, do we move back a bit, or do we stand with him as it's one line? It's okay to stand with him in one line, but some scholars say it's preferred to go back a bit, just to be safe that we're not going in front of the imam, right? Just to make sure we're not in front of the imam. So it's okay to go back a bit, a few inches back, so that a person makes sure that he's not praying in front of the imam. Was that clear? Then if it's one person praying with the imam, how does one person pray with the imam? Anyone wants to guess? On his right. That's the only way to pray is that you only pray on the right of the imam, right? Any questions about this? Any questions about the imam and the person being led? All right, now we'll come to the issue, how does the person praying behind the imam, how does he follow the imam? Does he go with him? Does he go after him? Does he go before him? Does he wait for a period of time before he follows the imam? We'll come to that inshallah now, which is called the following, right? So we took the imam and the person being led. That should be an A over there, the imam. The congregation has 3 parts: the imam, the person being led, and the following. Okay, the scenarios or the situations a person can follow the imam in. The first way is that you follow the imam, meaning whenever he finishes his act, you follow his act, right? So the imam goes into ruku', you go into ruku' right after him. When imam goes into sujood, you go into sujood right after him. That is the recommended way to follow the imam. That you follow him right after he has done his act. Had a question? You had a question?
When you talk about congregation, can be at home, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Just to pray at home.
Yeah. But it's better to pray in the masjid. So how does a person follow the imam over here? After the imam has finished his act, you do your act. So you do not start when he's midway. So if the imam is performing his ruku', you do not start getting into ruku' when he's in the middle of his ruku'. You go into ruku' as soon as he finishes to get into ruku'. Was that clear?
This one is also included when you're going to sleep?
Yes, so we said in taslim, yes, it's preferred that you start when he's finished both taslims. So Imam says, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. That's when you start your taslim, right? It is okay to start after the first taslim. After he does his first taslim, it is okay for you to start doing your taslim. But it's preferred for you to stay until he's finished both taslims, right?
So that means you have to look at the imam.
Okay, so what the imam should do is that when he says Allahu Akbar, or when he says Sami Allahu liman hamida, he should gauge it in a way that he finishes his saying as soon as he finishes his act, right? So it's wrong for a person to say Allahu Akbar then go into ruku'. He has to say Allahu Akbar as soon as he starts to get into ruku', and he should finish his Allahu Akbar as soon as he gets into ruku', right? So that you should be able to listen to the imam, right? The second way is to move with him. right? Meaning the imam moves and you're moving with him, right? You not wait for him to follow him, you're going with him, you're synchronizing with him, right? That is disliked. It is disliked for a person to do that, to move with the imam. He should wait until the imam has finished his act, then you follow him, right? The third way is to precede the imam, doing your act before the imam. That is prohibited for a person to do that. The Prophet ﷺ said, the person who raises his head before the imam raises his head from sujood, he should fear that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might change his shape into the shape of a donkey. Right? This is a warning from Allah, the Prophet ﷺ. The hadith is in Al-Bukhari, and the Prophet ﷺ gave this warning to not precede the imam. Never precede the imam. If a person intentionally precedes that imam, it could invalidate his prayer in certain issues. It could invalidate his prayer in certain issues. Was that clear? To precede the imam. The fourth way is to be late. Some people have extra khushu in salah, extra spirituality in salah, and the imam gets up from sujood and he's still in sujood, right? The imam has gotten up, it's been like a good 10-15 seconds and he's gotten up from sujood, and that person is still in sujood. That is wrong. A person should not do that. When a person is praying by himself, he can have as long as he wants his sujoods to be. But when he's praying the imam, for him to follow the imam is an obligation. For him to have a long sujood is a sunnah. We give preference to an obligation over a sunnah, right? So a person should not wait and make long sujood, especially if the imam has gotten up, right? Was that clear? Any questions about this or following the imam? Right, now we have how does a person catch the congregation and how does a person catch the rak'ah of the imam, right? So to catch the congregation, the minimum thing the least a person has to do is join the imam before he's done his salams. Right? Before he's given his salams, a person has to join the imam to catch the congregation. Right? Some people enter the masjid and they see the imam, he's almost about to finish, so they wait for a second jama'ah. Wait for a second congregation. That is wrong. A person should enter the first congregation. The reward for the first congregation is more than the reward for the second congregation. Right? Was that clear? As for catching the rak'ah, what is the least minimum a person has to do is that he has to join the imam before he rises from his ruku'. Before he rises from his ruku'. And this is very important. Meaning that when you enter your ruku', the imam has to still be in his ruku'. Meaning if the imam starts to rise and you enter your ruku', that rak'ah is not counted for you. Right? Sometimes what happens, the imam in his ruku' and you enter, and he starts to stand up, and you enter your salah. Right? That does not count for you. The imam has to be in ruku' when you get into ruku'. Was that clear?
When you get in, you say takbir to get in the salah, then you do another takbir to get into ruku'.
You have to get into ruku'. Okay, we'll come to that. Good question. You're asking about 1 or 2 takbirs, right? Okay. Oh, so you can either do 1 takbir or you can do 2 takbirs, right? Doing 2 takbirs is recommended. But if you do 1 takbir, the intention you make is the intention of entering the salah, not the intention of going into ruku'. We said there are 2 types of takbir. The takbirat al-ihram, which is the entering of the prayer, and we have the takbir of moving from one place to another, from one act to another, right? So the intention he makes is the intention of entering the prayer, not from going from the standing position into ruku', right? Similarly for sujood, if the imam is in his sujood, then it's recommended for him to do 2 takbirs, right? But if he does 1 takbir, it's enough as long as the intention is that he did the intention of entering the prayer and not moving from one act to another. Was that clear? Any questions about catching the prayer rak'ah? Sure.
Sometimes when you come, the imam is actually in an act, like he's moving.
Yeah.
Should we be moving or should we wait for 1 second?
Yeah, you should wait for him to finish his act. Yeah. So many people enter the masjid and imam is in his sujood and they wait for him to get up from sujood. No. If he's in his sujood, join him in his sujood, right? You should never miss out on a sujood with the imam. Was that clear? Any questions regarding imam or praying behind the imam? Any questions? Okay, I'll bring up an issue. What if you're praying a different prayer than the prayer of the imam? You're praying Maghrib and the imam's praying Isha, or you're praying Isha and the imam's praying Taraweeh. What do you do? Happens all the time, right? In Ramadan, people come to the masjid and the imam is praying Taraweeh and you're praying Isha. What do? So you have three scenarios. You're either praying a voluntary prayer behind an imam who is praying an obligatory prayer. Imam is praying Isha and you're praying Sunnah, right? What is the ruling of that? Second scenario is the opposite. The imam is praying a voluntary prayer and you are praying a obligatory prayer. You're praying Isha and the imam is praying Taraweeh, for example. The third issue is you both are praying obligatory prayers, but you're praying different prayers. He's praying Dhuhr, you're praying Asr. He's praying Isha, you're praying Maghrib. What is the ruling of that, right? So the first scenario, where the imam is praying an obligatory prayer and you are praying a voluntary prayer, it is by consensus okay. There's no difference of opinion between the scholars. That is okay for you to pray a voluntary prayer behind an imam who is praying an obligatory prayer. Was that clear?
So you mean you're able to know the imam is praying an obligatory prayer, but you will be joining the jama'ah, right? You have to pray voluntary.
Yes. So this can only occur if a person is helping someone to create a jama'ah. So we mentioned even in the times that are prohibited, that one of the prayers that are allowed for a person to pray in those times is to help someone create a congregation. I'll give you an example. The Prophet ﷺ once prayed Fajr. And after Fajr, a person came to the masjid. He was late. So the Prophet ﷺ told the Sahaba who prayed with him, who will help him create a congregation. So someone stood up and helped him make a congregation. For him, it was a voluntary prayer. But for the person who entered the masjid, for him was a obligatory prayer. So that's a situation a person can do that. The second issue is praying an obligatory prayer behind an imam who is praying a voluntary prayer. Praying an obligatory prayer behind an imam who is praying a voluntary prayer. The famous example is praying Isha behind the imam who is praying Taraweeh, right? Famous example. What is the ruling of that? There's a difference of opinions. The Hanbali school of thought goes with the opinion that it is not allowed for you to do that. Why? Because the niyyah of the imam is inferior to your niyyah. The niyyah for obligatory prayers is superior to the niyyah of the nafil prayer. So it's not okay for a person to pray behind the imam. That's one opinion. The other schools of thought go with the opinion that it's okay. Some schools of thought, not all other schools of thought. Some other schools of thought also go with the opinion that it's not allowed to pray. But some other schools, it's a valid opinion for a person to follow if he wants, that he can pray Isha behind the imam who is praying Taraweeh. But the Hanbali school of thought does not choose that opinion. They consider it to be invalid. Right? Was that clear? Any questions about this issue? We'll come to the obligatory ones.
I think a lot of masajid go with the opinion that
It's okay.
it's okay.
Yeah. So I just explained both opinions for people to know. Now you have the issue of praying an obligatory prayer behind another imam who is praying an obligatory prayer, but he's praying a different prayer, right? So let's say you were either traveling or you woke up late and you missed out Maghrib and you entered the masjid and the imam is praying Isha. What prayer do you have to pray? Maghrib, right? The sequence is an obligation. Praying in a sequence is an obligation except in one situation. We mentioned in the first class. Making up your prayers or praying in order in the sequence is an obligation except in one situation.
If Isha is about to
Finish. Exactly. If you wake up, for example, if you wake up for after Maghrib and let's say you sleep before Asr and you wake up after Maghrib, right? You wake up after Maghrib and there's only 5-10 minutes left for you to pray Maghrib before the time ends. So we tell them pray Maghrib now and then pray Asr, because to miss two prayers is worse than missing one prayer. If you pray Asr, then you'll miss out Maghrib as well. So we say for him to catch one prayer in the time is better than missing out on two prayers. That's one situation. So if a person comes to the masjid and he hasn't prayed Maghrib and the imam is praying Isha, there's a difference of opinions on how should he pray. The Hanbali school of thought says he should join the prayer and he should pray with the imam. Right? But now the issue comes that his rak'ahs are different. If your rak'ahs are more than the imam's rak'ahs, then that's easy. Right? You stand up after the imam finishes and you continue. Let's say you missed out on Maghrib and the imam is praying Fajr, for example. Right? And you join the imam, he prays his 2 rak'ahs, you stand up and you continue your third. Easy. But the issue is if the Imam's rak'ahs are more than your rak'ahs, right? He's praying Isha and you're praying Maghrib. So if you were able to only get 3 rak'ahs from him, meaning you missed out the first rak'ah with the Imam and you only got the last 3, then that is fine. You do your salam with the Imam and you have prayed your Maghrib and the Imam has prayed his Isha. But if you start with the Imam from the beginning of the prayer, there are 2 scenarios. Or there are 2 ways to pray in that situation. When the Imam is getting up from his second sajda, from his third rak'ah, what do you have to do? You have to sit, right? What does the Imam do? He stands up. So either you can make the intention of exiting the congregation and disconnecting yourself from the congregation and you continue your prayer and you do your salams and then you join the Imam for Isha, right? That's one way to do that. Second way to do it is that you sit in tashahhud and you wait for the Imam to come to his tashahhud and then you finish with him, right? These are both valid ways to do that. Was that clear?
How about if he's praying Isha, you have no to make
Yeah.
you just pray Isha with him?
No, the sequence is obligatory. Yes. Some scholars go with the opinion that sequence is not an obligation, but the majority of the scholars go with the opinion that the sequence is an obligation. Yes.
So the Imam is praying Isha and you have to pray Maghrib. Why do you have to join the congregation? Can't you just come and not join the congregation?
So the Prophet ﷺ said that if the prayer, if the call for the prayer is given, then the person should join the prayer. Yes. Yeah. Any questions about this? Sure.
I'm still not understanding that. So if you need to pray Maghrib and the Imam is praying the Isha congregation, so you pray the Maghrib prayer after praying the congregation?
No, you pray your Isha prayer after the congregation. You pray Maghrib with the Imam. Because we said the sequence is an obligation. Was that your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so you follow the sequence even if they're praying a separate
Yes.
prayer. That's a good
Yes. You're welcome. Any questions about this? About the Imam in general? Okay, where does if a man and his wife are praying together in congregation, where does the wife stand? Behind the Imam, right? Behind the Imam, right?
How far is it?
Like behind him. Not like slightly behind him, it should be behind him. Any other questions about the Imam before we get to the next slide? Alright, moving on inshallah. Now we have the issue of mistakes while a person is praying, right? Mistakes while the person is praying. We said there are 3 types of acts when a person is praying. We have the pillars, we have the obligations, and we have the recommended acts. If a person leaves out any recommended act, his prayer is valid. There's no sajda saw for that. There's no making up for that. Was that clear? For the recommendations, for the recommended acts, like the sunnahs, like reading Subhan Rabbil A'la 3 times, right? If a person says it 2 times or 1 time, we say it's a sunnah, you've missed out on a sunnah, it's fine. You continue your prayer. There's no sajda saw for that, right? But what if a person leaves out a pillar or leaves out an obligation? What does he do, right? So if a person leaves out both of them intentionally, his prayer is invalid, right? A person intentionally does not do a sajda. He's praying his first rak'ah and he does 1 sajda and he stands up intentionally. He knows that he's only done 1 sajda. His prayer is automatically invalid. A person intentionally does not say Subhana Rabbil A'la in his sujood. We say your prayer is invalid. A person intentionally does not do any one of his tashahhuds. We say your prayer is invalid. But what if a person unintentionally does something, right? If a person unintentionally does something, makes a mistake, forgetfully does this, right? Or forgetfully add something like an extra sujood. What does he do? That's all we'll talk about this in this slide, inshallah. Okay, the first thing is, so there are 3 types of mistakes a person can make while he's praying. He can either add something, or he can either leave out something, or either he can be doubtful of something, right? Adding something is like he's done 3 sajdas in 1 rak'ah. Missing something, he's done 1 sajda in 1 rak'ah. Doubting, he's doubtful. Has he done 2 or 1, right? That's what doubt is. How does a person deal with these issues? As for the addition, he can either add a saying or add an act. He can either add a saying or add an act. if that act is not from the sayings of the prayer, right? Let's say, can someone give me an example for a saying from the prayer? Like Fatiha. Fatiha, Subhan Rabbil A'la, Subhan Rabbil Azim, Tashahhud. These are from the standard sayings of the prayer, right? But what if someone says something that is not from the standard sayings of the prayers? Let's say a person says, how are you? He says, how are you? Or he says, Assalamu alaikum to someone, right? What is the ruling of that? So either it was excessive saying, or it was a very small amount of words. Either it was excessive sayings, or either it was a small amount of words. If it was a small amount of words, and he did it forgetfully, it is okay, he can continue his prayer. But if he did it intentionally, his prayer is invalid. His prayer is invalid. As for excessive amount of saying, the majority of the schools of thought go with the opinion that even if he does it unintentionally and forgetfully, that breaks his prayer. Right? Even if he does that unintentionally or forgetfully, that breaks his prayer. But there's an opinion that says it's okay if he did it forgetfully. Intentionally, no doubt, it breaks his prayer. Right? Unintentionally, some schools of thought, some opinions go with the opinion that it doesn't break his prayer, but the majority of the opinions go with the opinion that it does break your prayer. Right? Was that clear?
When you're saying that from the sayings of a prayer, are you specifically saying things that you would never say in the prayer? Let me rephrase it. So, if you just added something that is more of a dua.
And that's different. Yeah, that comes from the standard acts, because dua is from the standard acts of prayer. Right? So let's say a person is in his sajda and he recites an ayah of Quran. It doesn't fall under this. Right? And then you have the sayings that are from the sayings of the prayer or from the standard sayings of the prayer. What is the ruling of that? The first type of that is he either does a salam, or he either does something which is, or he either does something that's beside the salam. So if a person does an extra salam, what is the ruling? Right? How can a person do an extra salam? Anyone want to guess?
Extra salam?
Yeah.
Two salam?
Say salam the second rakah.
Yes, good one. So if a person is praying a 4 rakah prayer and he gives a salam in the second prayer, that's an extra, that's an additional salam that he did, right? Well, his salam should have been at the end of the prayer, but he did an additional salam over here. What is the ruling for that? We'll come to that now. If he does it intentionally, it nullifies his prayer, right? If a person performs a salam intentionally after a second rakah, that nullifies his prayer. Was that clear? What if a person does it unintentionally, forgetfully? There are two situations. Either he remembers that he gave his salam after 2 rakahs, and the gap between him remembering that and him breaking the salah was a very short gap. Meaning he gave the salam, he turned behind, and people told him, you prayed only 2 rakahs. A very short gap, right? What does he do in that situation? He stands up and he continues to pray. Does he say Allahu Akbar to enter the prayer or not? There are two opinions. Both of them are fine. Either he can say Allahu Akbar to enter the salah, or he can just enter the salah and make the intention. Was that clear? So if he forgetfully says salam after 2 rakahs, and the gap was a very short gap, he should stand up and continue his prayer. And then he does sajda sahu. I'm going to elaborate on sajda sahu right now. Sajda sahu can either be done before the salam or after the salam. Before the salam or after the salam. There's no difference of opinions between the 4 schools of thought that if a person does any one of those, either before or after, it is fine. It is fine, right? The difference of opinion occurs, what is preferred? What is better for a person to do? Was that clear? It is okay for a person to do such a sahu before the salam or after the salam.
So it doesn't matter, like additional, if there's something?
No, if he has to do such a sahu, when should he do? Like we said over here, if a person forgetfully does his salam and he has to do such a sahu, when should he do it? Before the salam or after the salam? Not in this salam, the next salam, the salam which he finishes prayers with, right? When should he do it? Before the salam or after the salam? There's no difference of opinions that it's okay to do at either time, before or after, right? But the difference of opinion occurs, when is it preferred for a person to do it? Before or after? So the ulama say, if it was for an additional thing, an additional mistake that he made, he should do it after the salam. Right? And if it was from something that he missed out on, then he should do it before the salam. So over here, is it an addition or or did he leave out something? Addition, right? He was supposed to do one salam at the end of the prayer, but he added a salam in the middle of his prayer. So we say, for him, he has to do the sajda sahu after the next salam, right? But if he does it before the next salam, it's fine. But it's preferred for him to do it after the salam. Now the issue comes, does he do 2 tasleems and get into sajda sahu, or 1 tasleem? You should do 2 tasleems. Do both salams and then enter sajda sahu. If I'm not mistaken, I think the Hanafi school of thought goes with the opinion that it's 1 salam and then you enter sajda sahu. But the majority schools of thought go with the opinion that you do salam on both sides and then you do your sajda sahu and get up and then you do the salam again, right?
Whether it's an addition or you forgot something.
Yeah.
Is it okay if you do it within?
No, you have to do it at the end of the prayer.
For an addition, you have to do it.
Both of them at the end of the prayer.
No, I meant like, right before the salam.
Yes.
Can you do both of them before making the salam?
Yeah.
In the prayer?
Yeah.
But this is saying you can also do that. If you do an addition, you can also do it the sujood sahu after the final salam.
Yes, it's preferred.
Preferred.
Yeah, doing it before or after salam is okay, but if it was an addition, then the person should do it after the salam. If it was something that he left out, we said leaving out an obligation mandates a sajda sahu. So if a person, for example, does not read Subhana Rabbil A'la by mistake in his sajda, we say you missed out on something, therefore your sajda sahu should be before the salam, right? Because he missed out on something. Is it clear? Any questions about sajda sahu? Sajda sahu. Sahu means to forget something or to make a mistake. Good question. So if a person has to perform sajda sahu, let's say he has to do it before the salam. He does his tashahud, he does his salah Ibrahimiyya, his durood, he does his dua, then he goes into sujood. He does 2 sajdas, he gets up and he does his salam. There's 2 sajdas, 2 normal sajdas. And then he does his salam. Was that clear?
Can we see a physical demonstration of this if possible?
Okay, I'll explain one more. If it's not understandable, I'll do it for the physical one. When you're in your tashahud, you're doing your tashahud, right? You've done your tashahud, you've done your durood, you've done your du'as, and you have missed out on something in the prayer that's mandated upon you to do a sajda sahu, right? So you say Allahu Akbar and you get into sajda, and you get up, you sit between the 2 sajdas, and then you get into sajda again, and you get up and you do your salams.
So this is before you do the
Salam, yes.
And then I thought you said there was another.
And it's okay to also do it after the salam.
So you can do it before or after?
Yes.
Okay, so it's 2 sajdas.
Yeah, 2 sajdas. You have to do 2 sajdas.
Okay.
You either do 2 sajdas before the salam or you do 2 sajdas after the salam. Was that clear?
Yes.
Okay, so the way to do it after the salam is a person does his tashahud, he does his durood, he does his dua, and then he does 2 salams, and then he says Allahu Akbar, and he gets into sajda. He gets up, says Allahu Akbar, gets up back, and then he says Allahu Akbar for a second sajda, then he says Allahu Akbar again to get back up, and then he does his 2 salams. Was that clear? Any questions, Sajda? Yeah.
Okay. So within your sujood, do you say Subhana?
Yes, as if it was a normal sajda.
And then before you make the final salams, after you do sujood sahu, do you have to say anything, or is it just straight salam?
No, straight salam. Straight salam. Sure.
What is this called? Can you say it slowly?
I'll write it down. Right? This is sahu, sujood, as-sahu. In English, you could say sahu, or you could say the sajda for forgetfulness or for mistakes.
So what about a person who done like lately the salah?
Yeah.
Then after you finish, you complete like the the Imam like, so when the Imam,
Good question. I'll answer that. So if a person is praying behind the Imam, there's no sajda sahu on him. Meaning, if he missed out, if he made a mistake, there's no sajda sahu on him. Is that clear? But if the Imam made a mistake, then he does sajda, and he does sajda sahu, you have to follow him, right? Even if you did not make that mistake, right? Even if you did not make that mistake. And if you made a mistake and he did not make a mistake, you do not do sajda sahu. If he made a mistake and you did not make a mistake and he did sajda sahu, you follow him. But if you made a mistake while you were making up for your lost rakahs, then you do sajda sahu. Was that clear? Okay, I'll repeat that. You came with the Imam. First scenario, you came with the Imam from the beginning of Salah, right? You prayed Isha 4 rakat with the Imam. The Imam forgot to say Subhana Rabbil A'la when he was praying, right? Now he has to do sajda sahu, but you don't have to do sajda sahu. But because you're praying behind the Imam, you have to follow him. So if he does a sajda sahu, whether it be before or after the salam, you have to follow him, right? Let's say you missed out 2 rakahs with the Imam. You joined the Imam in the 3rd rakah, right? He finished his prayer, you got up to pray. You have 2 more rakahs to pray. You missed out on Subhan Rabbil A'la in those 2 rakahs you were supposed to make up. Then you do sajda sahu. You get that? If you were praying with the Imam, and in the rakahs you were praying with the Imam, you missed out on Subhan Rabbil A'la forgetfully, then you do not do sajda sahu. Was that clear? Yeah.
If you're following the Imam, right, and you missed a rak'ah,
Yeah.
and within the rak'ahs that you're praying with the Imam, you forget something. You still have to do sajda sahu since you have 1 left anyways.
Would you repeat that?
So you're following the Imam, but you started the, like,
Yes.
1 rak'ah to make.
Yes.
Within the 3 that you were praying with the
Yes.
Imam, you forget something.
Yes. Then you don't.
Then you don't.
No.
But if you forget that 1,
Yes.
then
Then you do. Get that? Sure.
I don't know if you already went over this, but saying Subhana Rabbil A'la is Fardhu Salah.
Is an obligation. Yeah. So we said that we had the pillars and the obligation. Next class you should join from the beginning, right? So we said obligations, that the obligations, if they're left out intentionally, that invalidates your prayer. If you leave it unintentionally, you can make up for that sajda sahu. Clear, Hadi? Jazakallah khair for coming.
So this is within the obligation. So
No, this is, so salam is what?
salam is
A pillar,
oh, okay.
right? We said salam is a pillar.
So
You
if
have to keep
forget
up.
a pillar, you do sajda sahu?
It's an additional.
Yeah, okay.
We'll come to missing up. We'll come to missing up, right? If it was a long gap between the person making that additional salam and him remembering that he missed out, then he repeats his prayer, right? Let's say a person prays in the masjid, he has to pray 4 rakahs and he prays 2 rakahs and he gives a salam and he goes home and his friend or his son tells him, you know what, you only prayed 2 rakahs. So then he has to repeat the entire prayer. No, you repeat the entire prayer. You get that?
What if you're praying Salah and you unintentionally miss, let's say it's like Isha and you forgot second rakah. Right?
Okay, so we said mistakes while we're praying. There are 3 types of mistakes. You either add something, or you miss out on something, or you're doubtful of something. So now we're dealing with the additional stuff. After that, we'll do with the leaving out stuff, then we'll do with the doubt stuff, right? Questions? Yeah.
This goes back to nullifiers. Some people walk back and forth a little
Yes.
bit. Like, and I was, I don't know, I think maybe I was doing it once without knowing it.
Yes.
And I was told, like, hey, don't move during
Yes.
prayer. So what?
That's fine. If you didn't know about it, it's fine. Yeah.
But you shouldn't.
You shouldn't. No, you shouldn't. Question? Any questions about the salam? So we said from adding a saying from the sayings of the prayer can either be the salam or can be either something other than the salam. Like reading Fatiha twice or reading Tashahhud twice, right? What is the ruling for that? The scholars say that he continues, his prayer is valid, but it's a sunnah for him. It's not mandatory upon him, it's a sunnah for him to do sajda saw. A person should not read Fatiha twice. A person should not read tashahhud twice in one sitting, right? So if a person does that, he continues his prayer, and it is preferred for him to do sajda saw. Was that clear? Then you have the actions. If a person performs an additional act while he was praying. The first is which are not from the acts of the prayer. Like, for example, a person fixing his clothes. A person cracking his knuckles. Like, we mentioned that in the previous class, right? We said if a person has a slight movement, if a person does a slight movement for a need, what is the ruling? It was completely fine, permissible. And we gave the example of? The door, carrying a mushaf, turning off your cell phone, right? These are all for a need. Slight movement for a need. So it's okay. Then we had the slight movement without a need. Ruling? Dislike. Like, for example, cracking your knuckles. We said cracking your knuckles is dislike where you're praying. It's a slight movement without a need, right? Then we have excessive consecutive movement. We said, what does that do? That nullifies your prayer. So this is something we took in the previous class. Acts that are not from the standard acts of the prayer. Then we have acts which are from the acts of the prayer. Like sajda. If a person does 3 sajdas. If a person does 2 rukus. If a person reads 5 rakahs. Right? What is the ruling for that? What does he do? Forgetfully. We said intentionally nullifies, right? Unintentionally, what does he do? The first thing he does, intentionally nullifies. Forgetfully, the first thing he does is that he stops and he returns immediately. He stops and he returns immediately. Let me give you an example. A person was doing his second sajda in his 4th rakah, praying Isha. In his second sajda, he got up and he stood right up. Now he's praying his which rakah? No, he's in his second sajda in his 4th rakah. He stood up to his 5th rakah, right? Now, while he's praying in his 5th rakah, he remembers that he already prayed 4. What does he do? He stops immediately. He stops immediately, and he returns. Returns where? To tashahhud, because he missed out on tashahhud. So he returns where he should have returned to, tashahhud. If a person has performed 2 rukus, for example, he does 1 ruku, gets up, and then he goes into 2nd ruku, and he remembers that he should not have been in that place. What does he do? What does he do? Get into sajda right away, right? He gets into sajda right away, stops, and he gets into sajda right away. Was that clear?
So you're an imam, and you do 4 rakahs, and you're on your 5th knot, and then you realize that you have to say Allahu Akbar to get to your...
Yes, you move.
To sit down, to do your... Yeah. So you already did your first...
Yeah, I don't know. Could you write that down? I'll pick it up later. Okay, so we said a person, if he does something which are not from the standard acts of the prayer, the 3 types. Either he does a slight movement without a need. Let's say a person is cracking his knuckles, right? He's cracking his knuckles when he is praying. That is a slight movement without a need. That is disliked for him. It does not invalidate his prayer, but it's disliked for him. If a person does a slight movement with a need, he's praying and his cell phone rings. We say it's a slight movement to turn your cell phone off, and it's a need, so that you don't get annoyed, right? So that's okay, it's completely permissible. You're praying in your room, and someone knocks on the door. You can open the door, it's completely fine. You're reading, you want to read at night, Taraweeh, and you are someone who hasn't memorized the Quran. And so you want to hold the Quran to read from it, it's completely fine. It's a slight movement for a need. Then we said excessive consecutive movement, right? Let's say a person is praying and he walks around his house. That is consecutive movement, either for a need or without a need. Let's say he's praying and someone is choking next to him, right? In order to save him, he will have to have excessive consecutive movement to save him. We say you break your prayer and you go save that person. Was that clear? Sure.
So this is a scenario question, especially during Ramadan, we have Tarawih prayer. Sometimes after the congregation So in that case, there's a lot of room that opens up.
Yes.
So if a sister is in maybe towards the back rows, but then she notices 2, 3, 4 rows, there's like open space,
Yeah.
and she wants to fill that.
Yes.
At that point, is that consecutive need if she moves that far up, or is it just better to move maybe 1 row up and then?
If it's only 1 row, then that's a slight movement.
Right.
But if it's like multiple rows, then you should finish those 2 rakahs with the imam, and then for the next rakahs you go again ahead, right? Clear? Okay, the first thing a person does if he does an extra ruku or an extra sajda or an extra rak'ah is that he stops and he returns immediately. Secondly, he continues his prayer. His prayer is valid, so he continues. And thirdly, he does sajda saw. When does he do sajda saw? After the salam. But what if he does it before the salam? It's fine, right? Any questions about adding a rak'ah or ruku or any additional acts? Question, Hadi?
Yeah.
Sure.
Whenever I see whenever someone does make a mistake, imam makes a mistake, from my memory, I'm not sure if I'm correct, but they do 1 salam and then they go down.
Yeah, that's a valid opinion. So, but the majority of schools of thought go with the opinion you do 2 salams and then you do sajda saw, 2 sajda saws, and then you get up and do 2 salams. Okay? Questions? About the additional acts.
I'm not sure if we can go over this here or somewhere else, but if the imam is leading and he adds an extra.
Good question. Yeah, good question. So if the imam, let's say Zubair is leading and we're all praying behind him, right? And he gets up for his 5th rak'ah, and we all say Subhanallah. We all say Subhanallah, and he still continues. What should we do? First of all, it's obligatory upon him to go back and to listen to the congregation. If he doesn't, we all make the intention of exiting the congregation and we go into tashahud and we finish our prayers. Do you get that? We do not follow the imam if he increases a rak'ah or if he increases a sajda. Was that clear? His prayer is invalid for him to not follow the people behind him.
I mean, so if the imam thinks he's right and then they're right.
So imam has to listen if there's more than 1 person reminding him. If it's only 1 person reminding him, then he does not have to listen to him.
And then, okay, so when you get out of the prayer, do you wait while you're sitting for him to get down to salam?
No. You just do your thing. Is that clear? Any questions about that? Usually it doesn't happen, but
Sorry,
yeah, sure.
So if the imam increases the rak'ah, you don't continue with the
No.
imam, you continue with
Yourself. You continue by yourself. Right?
So each person's on their own, so if you have like
Yes.
20.
Yes. But it usually doesn't happen. Usually when people correct the imam, he usually follows. Right? Usually the entire masjid like Subhanallah. Right? Yeah.
When the imam say Allah Akbar instead of saying Allah Akbar.
Usually he corrects himself.
Huh?
Usually he corrects himself.
No, we should correct him or
Yeah, you should correct him. And usually he should correct himself. Yeah.
In terms of correcting the imam, is it strictly on brothers? What if a brother is leading a congregation of sisters
Yes.
and he makes a mistake and there's like a hafidah who knows the
Yes.
Quran? In that case, what takes place?
If it's for something like Quran, then she could slightly say something, right? But if it's for an act, let's say he got up for a 5th rak'ah, then the Prophet ﷺ said that they should clap. And the way they should clap is they should clap on the front of their hands. Do you get that? So if it's for a Quran, then that's different. But if it's for an extra rak'ah or he did an extra sujood, then they clap on their hands. They get it? The Prophet ﷺ said, "At-takbiru lil-rijal," the men say Allahu Akbar, and at-tasfiqu lin-nisa, that the women they clap their hands.
You say Allahu Akbar,
Subhanallah, Allahu Akbar, both are valid. Okay. Yeah, sure.
On the Haramain Facebook,
Yeah.
the imams always, like, after every movement, they always fix
Yeah.
their stuff.
It's considered it's considered slight movement without a need, so it's disliked. It's disliked. Many scholars have spoken about this, that the imam should not do that. Allah khair, inshallah. Then you have missing out on sure.
Qualification for forgetfully, so you have 3, so we should do all.
All three. Yes.
They should start, return, and then
Yes, continue and then do sajda. Yes, all 3. What if a person forgetfully adds a sajda, right? And he remembers and he still continues. Nullifies his prayer. We mentioned that in the nullifiers, right? So if a person adds a pillar in general, that nullifies his prayer unless he breaks it and goes back.
So if you're doing your third sajda and it is a doubt,
We'll come to the doubts. We'll come to the doubts. Come to the doubts. For missing, you either miss a pillar or you either miss an obligation. You either miss a pillar or you either miss an obligation. If you missed a pillar, you have three scenarios. The first scenario is that you remember that before you start the next rak'ah. You remember that before you start the next rak'ah. To give an example, a person is praying his first rak'ah in Isha by himself, and he is in his sajda and he remembers that he did not do his ruku'. He remembers that he did not do his ruku'. What should he do? We tell him to go back to ruku' and then continue from there. Right? To continue from there. Everything that he missed from that point to his sajda, that's invalid. So we don't say, so let's say if a person remembers that he did not do his ruku' in his second sajda, we do not say that, okay, you just do the ruku' and then you continue and you leave the two sajdas. No. The sajda that he missed, that he did after missing out the ruku', it's invalid. Was that clear? I'll repeat that. A person is in his first rak'ah and he is in his second sajda. Now the only thing he forgot was his ruku'. He did his two sajdas, but he forgot his ruku'. How many pillars did he miss? One. But he performed the pillar of sajda after that, right? That is invalid because it did not come in order. Was that clear? So he has to repeat the ruku' and whatever comes after the ruku'. Was that clear? So if he remembers that he missed out on a pillar before starting the next rak'ah, then he goes back and he continues. He goes back and he continues. But what if he remembers after he starts the next rak'ah? If he remembers after he starts the next rak'ah, he cancels the first rak'ah and then he considers his second rak'ah his first rak'ah. Was that clear? To give an example. A person is in his second rak'ah and he remembers in his first rak'ah he forgot a sajda. He remembers in his first rak'ah he forgot his sajda. He forgot one sajda. We say you cancel your first rak'ah and this rak'ah that you're praying in, it becomes your first rak'ah, right? It becomes your first rak'ah and the previous rak'ah is cancelled and nullified, right? He continues, but he considers that his second rak'ah. The issue comes in when a person is in his fourth rak'ah. He's in his fourth rak'ah and he remembers that he missed out on something in the first rak'ah. What should he do? He considers his fourth rak'ah his third rak'ah. And he does one more rak'ah, right? He doesn't have to start all from there. He starts from his third, he considers that his third rak'ah and he does one more. Was that clear? Then you have the issue if he remembers after the salah. It is as if he missed a rak'ah. If he remembers it after he finished his salah, it is as if he missed a rak'ah. What is the ruling of missing a rak'ah? So if someone's smart, he can connect the dots.
It depends if he's right.
Do the last rak'ah, do one more.
No, like we mentioned this issue before, like a few minutes before.
So if there's a gap,
What has he done if he's missed out on rak'ah? He's done something additional. He's done an additional salam. So he has the same ruling of someone who's done an additional salam forgetfully. So we said if a person forgetfully does an additional salam, what does he do?
He gets in.
If there's a short gap, he continues and he just says so. If there's a long gap, he repeats. Same over here. It is as if he missed a rak'ah. If the gap is small, he continues. If the gap is long, he repeats the entire prayer. Any questions about this? Was this clear?
So if you miss a rak'ah and if the gap was short, you can repeat it, and if not,
You continue, you make up for whatever you've missed and you do such a so.
even if you've done the taslim already.
Yes. So that taslim will be considered an additional taslim. Did you get that? Yeah.
Okay, so for the second one, if you remember the next rakah you want to add a pillar, but you have to add the extra rakah,
Yes.
right? And you're leading the congregation, your imam.
Yes.
But
Same ruling. Same ruling. The issue comes with if the person praying behind the imam misses out on a pillar, not an obligation, misses out on a pillar intentionally, what happens then? In that issue, unintentionally. If he misses out on a pillar unintentionally, he cancels that rak'ah and he starts with, and he considers his second rak'ah his first rak'ah. I'll give you an example. Imam is praying his first rak'ah and you're with him. He gets up from ruku', you get up from ruku'. He goes into sujood, you don't go into sujood with him. Right? You don't go into sujood with him. You're fixing your clothes, whatever. He gets up from a second sujood. You still don't go with him. He gets into second sujood. Then you join him. Right? You missed out on what? On one sujood and the sitting between the two sajdas. If you were able to quickly make a sajda and sit between the sajda and continue with him, then that's fine. But if there was a long gap, and when he's done a lot before that, between you and him, then you cancel that rak'ah and then you have to make up one more rak'ah after the imam. Was that clear? Was that clear? Yeah.
So I have another question. For scenario 3, you said if there's a short gap, then you can continue the prayer and the taslim is considered as an addition.
Yes.
And does that mean you do sajda sahwi
Yes.
right after?
Yes.
And that's for each of the 3 scenarios?
No, only for the
Only for the third.
yeah, third.
Okay.
Yeah. Any questions about missing out on a pillar?
You don't do sujood sahwi on the first 2.
No, you only do it in the third.
You just add the pillar.
Yeah.
Add the extra rakah.
Yeah. Now, missing out on an obligation. Missing out on an obligation. Anyone can give an example for an obligation? No, that's a pillar. Give another example. We mentioned that example once. Which tashahhud is an obligation?
The first.
The first. What is the criteria for differentiating between the first and the last tashahhud? Yes, it is followed up by a taslim. The last tashahhud is followed up by taslim. The first tashahhud is not followed up by a taslim. The obligation, if a person misses out on an obligation before starting the next pillar, not the next rak'ah, the next pillar, he returns and continues from there, right? Let's say a person misses out on jalsat tashahhud, right? He misses out on the first tashahhud. He gets up from a second sajda, right? And he's standing up. As he's standing up, he stands up. He stands up, and he remembers that he should have done tashahhud. Did he start his next pillar?
Yeah.
No. His next pillar is what? Fatiha. He hasn't started his next pillar. Do you get it? He hasn't started his next pillar, right? So we tell him to go back and do tashahhud. If he starts his Fatiha, we tell him no, you don't go back, right? But if he hasn't started his next, if he hasn't started his next pillar, which is Fatiha, we tell him to go back and do tashahhud, right? If he started the next pillar, meaning he stood up and he remembered that he didn't read he didn't read tashahhud, we tell him to continue and to perform sajda sahu, right? The sajda sahu will make up for him missing out on that obligation forgetfully. Was that clear? Any questions about this?
So standing up after the first taslim is not a pillar?
No.
I mean first
No.
Okay, and because I guess from how I used to do it is if you're standing up, if you're on your way up, you
still go back now.
But if you stand up all the way, you just stay up.
Yeah. As long as you've not started Fatiha.
So
If you start reading Fatiha,
stop,
yes.
not the standing.
Yes. It's clear? Any questions about missing out on something? Alright, we'll start with a doubt. Now you have multiple types of doubts. The first type of doubt is a person doubts if he missed a pillar or not. Let's say a person is in his second rak'ah and he doubts that he missed his second sajda in his first rak'ah. Let me repeat that. person is in his second rak'ah, he's praying, and he has serious doubt that he missed out on a sajda in his first rak'ah, right? Before we get into this, it's very important a Muslim should be careful to only follow serious doubt, right? There's a shaitan that whose job is only to mess up people's prayers and to cause doubt for people, right? A Muslim should be careful to not follow every doubt, right? Because what will happen is that will keep building up, and he will go crazy, basically. He will go mental at the end of the day. He keep on following his doubts until everything will become doubtful for him. So it's only when you have like legitimate, serious doubt, that you're very unsure that you did do 2 sajdas or 1 sajda. Did you do your ruku or did you not do your ruku, right? This is what we're talking, that's a type of doubt that we're talking about, right? So if he doubts that he missed a pillar, it is as if he missed it. If he doubts that he missed a pillar, it is as if he missed it. What's the ruling of missing the pillar? The 3 scenarios, right? If a person doubts that he missed a ruku or he missed a sajda, it's as if he missed it. He follows the procedure that we mentioned. If he doubts about the number of rak'ahs, that he's performed, he goes with the number that he's certain with, and that's usually the lower number. The lower number is usually the number he's certain with. So if a person is in his 4th rak'ah and he does not know whether it's his 3rd or his 4th, he's doubtful. We say you go with the lower number, which is 3rd rak'ah. If a person which is praying, he's doubtful whether he's done 5 or 4, we go with the lower number, which is 4, right? And he bases his prayer on that. Was that clear? Similarly with tawaf, if a person is performing tawaf and he doubts, has he done 6 rounds or 7 rounds, we tell him to base it on the lower number, which is a certain number, which is 6, right? Any questions about this? Okay, so if a person is doubtful about the number of rak'ahs that he's done, he bases it on the lower number, because that is certain for him. So he has performed 3 rak'ahs for sure, but he's doubtful that he's done his 4th rak'ah or not. So he bases it on the lower number, which is a certain number. Was that clear?
So then if you were supposed to pray 4 rak'ahs, you only prayed 3, which is your certain.
Yes.
Then you go and you pray another one?
Yes.
Okay.
If a person is doubtful about missing an obligation, right? A person is in his sajda and he's doubtful, did he read Subhana Rabbil Azim in his ruku or not? We say there's nothing you do, there's no sajda for that, you don't do anything for that, you just continue your prayer. That doubt should be completely disregarded, right? Was that clear? If a person is doubtful that did he miss an obligation, he completely disregards that doubt and continues his prayer, and there's no sajda sahu for that. Was that clear? If a person is doubtful of adding a pillar, let's say a person is in 2nd rak'ah and he is doubtful, did he do 2 or 3 sajdas in his 1st rak'ah? He's doubtful, did he do 2 or 3 sajdas in his 1st rak'ah? We say you disregard that doubt and you continue your prayer. Unlike if you're doubtful of missing a prayer. So if you're doubtful of missing a prayer, it is as if you've missed it. But if you're doubtful for adding a pillar, then that is, you disregard that doubt and you continue. Was that clear? Any questions? Any questions about this?
With the doubts. If you are doubtful about missing a pillar because it fits in the pillar, you don't do sujood sahwi. But
True.
if you're doubtful about the number of rukus, and so you go with the lower number,
Yeah.
you do sujood
No.
sahwi? So no sujood sahwi on any of the doubts.
Sujood sahwi is only when you do a salam, or you do an early salam, or you forget an obligation. Again. Any questions?
Yeah. What happens if you prayed like all your 5 salahs and then you remember the fajr, you forgot something?
So the scholars say that if a person remembers the doubt after the prayer and there's a long gap, it's a doubt, not a certainty. You get that? So there's a doubt, not a certainty. Then he disregards that doubt. Any doubt after the prayer, after he's finished the prayer, is disregarded.
And if it's
Certain, then you have to repeat the prayer. Any questions? Yes. Yeah. There
So upon taking this class, we come to the conclusion that we prayed all of us our salawat incorrectly, like every last one of us.
So the Prophet ﷺ says that if a person did not know something, he's forgiven. Right? Let's say a person prayed wrong, prayed incorrectly for 100 years, and then he learns, all his is forgiven for him. If a person does not know that something is haram and he engages in that for 100 years, he is forgiven. It's from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sure. You had a question? Oh. Yeah. Any questions? I'm sorry, we have to cut this class a bit short because I'm a bit sick. Right? Subhanakallah bihamdik ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Next class, we've done everything that has to do with Salah. Next class, we'll do the types of prayers. Jum'ah, Eid, Janazah, and so on and so forth, inshallah. One class left, inshallah. Next Sunday at this time. The last one, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.